Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning for our webinar on the demographics of Connecticut's English learners, digging into the new EL Data Bulletin. My name is Megan Alubicki Flick, and I am joined by my CSDE colleagues, Michael Sabatos and Janet Stuck, along with an esteemed panel that will be talking through some of the demographic shifts and changes that they've seen in their own district contexts. Just before we get started, I wanted to let you know to please submit your questions through the question box. You are muted, but we will have time for question and answers at the end of the broadcast. We will also answer questions after the fact if we are not able to get to all of them today. And this webinar is being recorded and will be able to be accessed through the Performance Matters 2020 page of the CSDE's website. Next slide, please. So the first thing we'd like to do is introduce you to our esteemed panel. Today we have with us Suzanne Shippey from Bloomfield Public Schools, Liz Peasy of East Hartford Public Schools, Shalise Ross from West Hartford Public Schools, Maria Zampano from Shelton Public Schools. We have Daisy Torres from Hartford Public Schools, Evelyn Robles Rivas from Meriden Public Schools, Helene Becker from Norwalk Public Schools, Rowena Zalali from New Fairfield Public Schools, and Adela Jorge Ferguson from Waterbury Public Schools. And so the structure of this webinar is that we're going to talk through some of the topics from our EL Data Bulletin. And we're going to talk a little bit about the data and what we saw at the state level. And then we're going to move into our panelists sharing a little bit of that that trend that we saw at the state level from their own perspective of their district. And now I will turn it over to Michael to get started with our first topic.
Okay, so we're just going to start with the larger view of this student population. And I just want to take a second because, first of all, to thank the panel, but to take a second to talk about what we're trying to do here. On a lot of these presentations, we're drilling down on smaller topics. But this one, we're going to take a broad overview of the English learner student population, a remarkable population. And I think in what's been a challenging year for everybody, sometimes it's important to kind of take a step back and look at this really remarkable student group and what they bring to our student body in terms of diversity and multiculturalism, and to sort of take a look at what that larger picture is for them. So as Megan said, we're going to present some larger data, and then the districts our district panelists will be sort of fleshing out what that looks like in terms of their local situation. So we're very thankful for that, and that's the way we kind of like to do our presentations. So we'll start off, Megan will be reviewing some of the legislation around English learners. Next slide, please.
I'd first like to apologize for the very wordy slide that you're seeing, but the information is really critical. And so that's why this one slide of all of the others has quite a bit of information right on it for your viewing. So as all of us know, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act affirmed that English learners are entitled to receive English language services. This was reauthorized most recently as ESSA. What's really critical to consider here is that English learners are entitled to receive these services to help them attain English proficiency and realize mastery of the same core academic grade level content as other students. So therefore, their education is not just the responsibility of TESOL and bilingual teachers, but also that of general education faculty. That is just such a critical element. That is why it's in bold. That's why the slide is so wordy. It's essential for us all to think of English learners as belonging to all teachers, all schools. The Connecticut General Statute, Section 1017A through N, define English learners as students who lack sufficient mastery of English to assure equal educational opportunity in a regular education program. Although that is the formal legal definition, we need to remind folks that the Connecticut State Department of Education values the linguistic and ethnic diversity of English learners and the rich cultural capital that they bring, and values multilingualism as a great asset that positively impacts students, schools, and communities. Next slide, please.
And just to sort of piggyback on that a little bit, ESSA is really a tremendous piece of legislation concerning ELS, because it really addressed and put a lot into thinking about education for ELS. You know, it sort of gave states a lot more of a prescription in terms of what we should do, but also kind of strengthening our hand in terms of coming up with things like a standardized identification process, asking more from us in terms of reporting around these kids. And importantly, when it comes to accountability, moving away from snapshot measures of proficiency, like going back to the old NCLB days, to being able to focus on what's more important for these kids, growth in terms of language proficiency. You know, so ESSA really kind of gave us a lot of freedom in how we approach as a state and the guidance that we can provide for this student population. And I think it's huge. I mean, it's tremendous how ESSA has helped us in that way. So in this slide, what we're looking at is one of the first and key observations when you look at English learners in Connecticut, and that's the growth in this population. So what we're doing here is we're taking school year 2015-16 as a baseline and saying for each succeeding year, what's the change in the number of students? So over a 5-year period, comparing to 2015-16, the number of ELS has gone up by 24% at a time when the number of students who are not ELS declined by over 4%. So we're close to almost 44,000 ELS in the state. And I can remember way back when I started, when that number was just over 30,000. And the percentage of students was under 5%. Now we're at 8.3% of all students are ELS. This is truly remarkable, particularly when you think about all students, and you know, pre-K students largely are not identified as ELS. So you have this large group of students who are largely not an L. But still, if you even include them in the mix, 8.3% of all students in Connecticut now are English learners. And when we thought about this, we thought a number of things contribute to this. Global events, civil unrest, natural disasters. Another thing is in terms of mastery. I took a look, and our mastery rate over this time period has declined from about 13% overall to about 10%. And that sort of holds for where the bulk of the kids are in K through 5, that sort of 3% decline. What is interesting, though, is when you look at middle school kids, 5 years ago, about over 20% of middle school ELS were reaching mastery in any particular year. That percentage has declined to around 13–14%. So part of the story is also students not being able to test out, particularly when we look at our duly identified students. And as you know, there is no alternate assessment at this time for those, the 1% population. So that's also a factor in this too. I think Janet also kind of wanted to weigh in here as far as our L identification process. Janet, if you want to say it. Sure.
Yes, I just wanted to mention and remind our participants that our L identification process has become more standardized over the years. So it's if the student has any item other than English, then they would be considered for screening for L status. So that over the years has also impacted the potential for our students to be identified.
Great point. Next slide, please. As most of you know, the K to 5 is where the bulk of the L population is. Next slide, please. But continuing with this idea of growth, now it's not surprising that those growth percentages are a little lower K to 2 because that's where the bulk of the kids are. So that's just simple math. A large group, you're going to see lower growth percentages. But look at how it spikes. Look at how, and so what we're looking at is over the 5-year period, how has the number of L's in each of those grades changed? So 28% growth in 3rd grade. Look at when you get to middle school, over 30% in each of those years. And then the spike in 9th grade. And just out of curiosity, I wanted to see what was contributing to that. And it was 2 different trends. One is a number of those new kids or that growth are immigrant students. And the other part are special ed students who haven't been able to test out at through middle school. 43% of these kids too, these 9th graders, are long-term Ls. So again, these kids who are not able to test out. And when we wrote a paper about high school Ls, that was one of the things that we saw that was really driving growth of the high school L population is, on the one hand, you have long-term Ls who simply are not able to test out, many of them being special ed students, and then immigrant students. And certainly that's graphically what's being, driving this growth here in 9th grade. Next slide, please. So another factor, another interesting thing about the L population, while 59% of all Ls in the state are concentrated in just 9 districts that have at least 1,000 Ls, the L population is spread through almost every district. 5 years ago, 32 districts didn't have an L. And I remember, and Megan can certainly remember these days, when we would used to get frantic calls from districts. We have an L. We don't know what to do with this. Usually from the special ed department. But that's becoming more a thing of the past. Now only 14 districts in the state, and a lot of them are charter schools, don't have an L. The interesting thing too is, where is the growth occurring? A lot of the fastest growth is occurring among those smallest districts, those that have less than 20. And actually the fastest growth was between those, with those districts that have between 29 or 20 but less than 100. The growth there over the last 5 years was 52%. And remember, for the state as a whole, growth was 24%, but it was 52% growth in the number of Ls in those districts that had between 20 and 29 Ls. So that's really quite remarkable growth over just a 5-year period. So these are the state figures, and in the L bulletin, there's a lot more detail and commentary around these things, but we want to leave time for our districts to talk about what these things mean on the ground to them. So the first person who's going to be talking about L growth and what it means to their district is Suzanne Shippey from Bloomfield, where they've seen more than a doubling in the number of their Ls over the last 5 years.
Good morning. First, I'd like to thank Michael, Megan, Janet, Michelle, and all the others at the state for preparing these webinars. I know I've found them to be a great help and encouragement, especially during this time of isolation. I'd also like to share some fun news to start off. Reader's Digest recently named Bloomfield as the nicest place to live in Connecticut. Now, it wasn't necessarily based on having the most extravagant shopping arena or even the highest SAT scores in the country. To be honest, we're an Alliance district, and we are working really hard to help all our students succeed. but it was based on the fact that we're an extremely diverse community, showing how it can come together during this year of social and health pandemics. It's just a nice community.
Suzanne, before you get started, if I could just touch base with the audience quickly about the prompt. I just wanted to note that before Suzanne talks a little bit more about Bloomfield and the other districts start talking about their own context as well, we have designed this webinar so that you can, in your own district context, utilize it if you see fit, in any way that you see fit. So we've added these prompts as potential ways to get the conversation started either today during the webinar or in your own districts if you choose to use these topics to guide conversation among your schools, your administrators, your board, your communities, etc. So while some of our panelists may be directly addressing these prompts, others may be talking about the topic on a little bit of a different vein, but we've included prompts with each of our topics so that you have a sense of what you may wish to ask should you use this in your own district context. Next slide, please.
Great, thank you. So I was just saying that Bloomfield is a nice community with very nice people, and I'm sure that's part of the reason why we've had this tremendous increase, 164% increase in the English learner population since 2015. You can see a little more about the district on the screen. So you see that 86% of our ELs receive free or reduced price meals. That's a little higher than the state average. 24% receive special education services, also a little higher. 16% are immigrants, that's a little lower. And we have 11 languages represented. I think I saw in one of Michael's reports that the average number of languages for a low incidence district is actually 3. So this in itself presents a challenge for us. The good news is that we've been very happy with an interpretation service with the interpretation services of a company called Language Line Solutions. And I know other districts are using other companies. You can also see that we have more English learners in the upper grades, which is different than most of the state. So this presents another set of challenges as the academic expectations increase for the older students. Our action plan is based on the challenges faced by most low incidence districts. As Michael mentioned, there are 54 districts with 20 to 99 ELs. So we represent anywhere from 1,000 to almost 6,000 students, not a small number when you put us all together. And I have a confession to make. I have this false impression, and I know it's false, that it might almost be easier if we had more English learners, so we could have dedicated classes to meet their needs. Right now, we only have 74 students, but they're spread out among 200 or so teachers. So it's really a challenge and our responsibility to work with each faculty and staff member to inform and assist them as well as our students. Next slide, please. A key factor in our growth, I believe, has really been what Janet mentioned, the implementation of the clear, standardized EL identification process developed by the state. We took that, we put together reference materials and trained our registrars on the importance of that home language survey and the need for it to be sensitively explained to families. As new staff is hired or summer staff comes on to register folks, we need to make sure they're also trained. Also, our teachers are more aware of English learners in their classroom. Over the last 4 years, our administration has been dedicated to providing formal and informal professional development opportunities several times every year. In addition, we now have TESOL staff in each building who collaborate regularly, and I do mean regularly, almost daily, with the general educators and the special educators to determine what resources these kids need. Like the rest of you, we don't believe in dumbing down any work. We want to provide the tools to help them build that background, to understand the vocabulary so they can be successful. I'm also very fortunate to have a super professional support staff who understand the importance of developing strong relationships with the students and their parents and guardians. You know, families are our greatest allies. Right now, we're in the process of just communicating little notes, praising the students, and the notes that we get back from the parents are just very appreciative, and it builds that bond that helps us and helps the students academically as well as socially and emotionally. Most of our staff either have or are in the process of obtaining certification or a master's degree in TESOL. But I have to be honest here too, 3 in the last 2 years have told me at the time of hire that they're going to be pursuing full-time work when they're done with their studies. So our challenge is to find a way to afford these highly qualified professionals in a low incidence district. And finally, our current program focuses on learning language through the content, so students don't fall behind in their grade level work. I have to say that working remotely with students in Google Docs has been actually a wonderful benefit for EL instruction. But based on our recent LastLink scores, working primarily through the content isn't always meeting the growth objectives that we want or that the state has set. So we will be increasing specialized language learning time, and we're in the process of reviewing different programs. My personal hope is that one day we'll get the LastLink scores, but then we'll have another step. We click on a link and then we get specific studies to meet each student's individual needs. There's a business opportunity there for someone. I'm interested in hearing from other panelists, so now I'm just going to say thank you and turn you over to Liz Peasy from the much larger district of East Hartford. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, so I'm with East Hartford Public Schools, and we have a little bit of a different story. We are a highly, highly diverse district with currently 933 English learners in our buildings. So we have also seen a tremendous growth. It has really been pretty evenly spread out, K through 12, but we have grown by 248 students in the last 5 years, which is an increase for us. Our English learners represent 14% of our population. So every single teacher in our district has an English learner in their classroom, which gives us a really good focus area that no one is really exempt from working with our English learners. So we expect that soon we'll be joining that esteemed group of districts with 1,000+ students. That will be one of those any day now. I think if we weren't in our current situation, we were expecting to be there at the beginning of this year, but I'm sure we'll get there. The kind of students that we're seeing are mostly new arrivals coming from other countries with very limited or no English skills. There's a shift this year, obviously. We are seeing many more students that are transferring from other districts or moving from a different state. And then we also have a handful of students that had arrived in the spring and just had not enrolled in schools. So since September, we really haven't seen our traditional new arrival that was coming from Central America or Ghana, Vietnam. Those are our largest countries of our students' background. So it's a little bit different this year, but we continue to see growth. So next slide, please. So where we have focused all of our efforts is really on professional development and innovation. So professional development, as was shared in one of the first slides, we've really focused on the classroom and content area teachers. When we look at one of our ELS days at the elementary level, they're with the ESL or bilingual teacher for 30 to 45 minutes, and then the rest of the day they're in their classroom. So we need to teach those teachers how to service or how to work with our English learners most effectively. And the same goes at the high school level. Even though we have a new arrival team, any of our teachers will have an English learner in their class at any given point. So we added a module to our new teacher orientation, which is specifically focused on English learners. So every new teacher into the district receives that training. My ESL and bilingual teachers at every building will provide a strategy and model what that looks like for English learners during staff meetings or grade level meetings. We've decided to make that a 5 to 10 minute monthly presentation just to keep it on everybody's minds. We did hire Maggie Stevens last year to work at one of our larger elementary schools, where she came in for 10 days and she observed the classes and then came back and worked with the teachers to identify the ways that they could support the English learners. And then they were given a toolkit of recommendations to be able to use ongoing throughout the years. And then we also have developed a website this year for our teachers to access that has links to strategies, the KELP standards, a LAS links interpretation guide, some translating tips. There's so much information out there, we don't want to overwhelm them, so we tried to pick from the top resources and just make it a go-to place for our teachers. As far as administrators, the PD I focused on has been on teaching administrators the questions to ask their teachers when they're planning, and also as they're coaching and doing post observations on what are they doing to help the English learners, what incorporating those questions into those conversations so that it is present on everyone's mind at all times. Then the second thing we've invested in is Elevation. So we purchased this about 1.5 years ago, and Elevation is a data management tool that is dedicated just to English learners, and it is very user-friendly. So it allows us, or my teachers, it just makes all of those administrative tasks so much easier that they can spend time focusing on instruction. So there are different views. So I get to see the whole district, principals see their building, and classroom teachers see their classrooms. And if you're a classroom teacher, you log in and you see all of your English learners, and you have immediate access to their language, how long they've been in the country, what their LAS link scores are, and what the growth has been, as well as recommendations for modifications that my ESL and bilingual teachers have entered for every single student. So all of those resources are right there and very easy to use. And what we found is that it has improved our communication because it's an easy way for the bilingual ESL teachers to work with the classroom teachers. And we're all kind of speaking the same language now. We're using the same terms. We're having those same conversations. Our upcoming goals with Elevation is to start using it to set language goals. So we will be able to start setting the language goals for the students in the system. And again, we'll have that same kind of communication. We're all talking about the same things between the classroom teachers and the ESL and bilingual teachers. So that's where we are at East Hartford. It's always a fun and exciting place with lots of new challenges in this new environment, but it's been great.
Okay, thanks, Liz. We're going to move on to our second topic, where we're talking about increased language diversity. Next slide, please. And what's amazing here, while Spanish continues to be the most prevalent language among ELLs, and that percentage, 72%, it's been around that percent for many years now, is the incredible diversity of languages. So while we've got the 15 top ones listed here, all others, that second to the last row, that's 130 languages. So altogether, Connecticut ELLs speak have 145 different native languages. Really, really remarkable. And I think what's amazing is I think about my time with the State Department and working in this area is just how much the languages and the prevalence of languages reflect what's going on around the world and how much our student body mirrors global events. So whether we're talking about civil conflicts like in the Middle East and the rise of Arabic as a more prevalent language in Connecticut, or economic problems in Central or South America, and then we see an increase in Spanish and Quiche Kiche, for the first time actually this year, was identified as for a mandated program in one particular school. Or Portuguese, students coming from Brazil. Natural disasters, obviously, the Hurricane Maria, and then migration from India, for the first time having very significant numbers of students who have a native language from India. And it's pretty remarkable how the student body mirrors a global community increasingly. It's a terrific thing. Next slide, please. And here is what Suzanne was referencing before, is like the average number of languages by the size of the district's number of total L's. For those largest districts, we're talking about on average 42 different native languages among their L's. Hartford has the most, or as far as like our data, 64 languages, followed by New Haven with 49, Bridgeport and West Hartford with 45. Particularly, and then you have some outliers, some smaller districts like Shelton, and Maria Zampano is going to be presenting on Shelton, a more moderate sized district that has 40, or at least when we were doing our data, had 43 different languages, native languages among their L students. So I'm going to turn it over to Maria, who will start to talk about language diversity in the Shelton Public School District.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share our experience in Shelton. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk about how we have been able to meet the needs of our linguistically diverse school community. So besides language or translation services, we have been able to find some tools that can support our students, not only our students, but also our families. Shelton Public Schools currently has 274 English learners, and since our mid-October count, that's 10 more, which is a lot when compared to previous years. So how do we meet the needs of the students who have 39 languages, but that is only our identified students? It doesn't take into consideration students who have exited or students who did not qualify. So in order to better build that school to home relationship, we have been using Talking Points app. This is an app that can be accessed on your computer or through a cell phone, keeping your phone number confidential. You can communicate with parents with information from school, and I've used it to share about holidays, days off from school. I've also added other teachers to my account. I've added the school nurse to my account and the office staff, so that if they needed to communicate with parents, they have the ability to do so. Just this summer, I discovered Microsoft 365 educators can access this platform, and the PowerPoint has the ability to allow for subtitles in multiple languages. This September, we had a parent university, and when I discovered that there was a parent who did not speak English, was not able to access this, but wanted to have Portuguese subtitles, I was able to provide those for the parent. Additionally, people can have access to them, to your slides on their device, and they can individualize the language for themselves as well. Currently, my administrator at the school I work uses the SMORE newsletters. And I was curious, I was wondering, how is this information getting to our families? Would they be able to access it? So when I went to SMORE to do some more investigation, I did see that parents would be able to do the translation from that. The only caveat is that any documents such as PDFs, those would not be translated. So just keep that in mind if you do use SMORE newsletter. We also have used parent and teacher volunteers. We took a survey of our staff to see if anyone was able to speak a different language, to read and write, and was willing to help us with simple translations, things that did not require any confidential information to be shared. And so we had a teacher who speaks Canadian, was able to provide us support we needed. French, of course, we have Spanish. I speak Portuguese, and there were many teachers who were able. Sign language was another one. So we had some volunteers to help us with that. We also have been using, because we are a Google for Education school district, we have been using many of the platforms in Google, such as Google Sheets. If you're pre-teaching vocabulary, Google Sheets has a formula that allows for word-to-word translations in multiple languages. These, when you receive the PowerPoint for today's presentation, these are all hyperlinked, and you can have access to either the website or an instructional document to show you how to use these. Google Docs, when one of my high school project was to create stories with wordless picture books and then go on a road trip to elementary schools and share these stories with the young students. My students were able to write in their native language and use the translate tool in Google Doc to translate. And then we had many lessons to work on grammar lessons and so forth to polish those pieces. I also teach my students and my parents how to use the Google Translate extension. This is different from the Google Translate app. The extension allows for many different websites to be translated into native language. For example, our school is a Newsela district. We have our students access Newsela articles. However, my Ukrainian student, a newcomer at the high school, was unable to understand that. So once we got the extension working for him, he was able to translate that same content into his native language. And therefore, he was getting the content that we were doing in class, but was able to access it. And finally, the YouTube multilingual subtitles. With COVID, we were providing all sorts of resources for parents to help prepare our students, to let them know what they could expect when they started school. And among those resources were YouTube videos to share with families, but they were in English. And so we did a very brief tutorial on how to use the subtitles, again, in multiple languages. And so you have these links if you are interested in looking at them and learning how to implement them in your own school district, please do so. And I'd like to turn it over to Shalise Ross, who will continue the discussion on this topic. Thank you.
There we go. Hi, everybody. I'm Shalise Ross. I am the coordinator in West Hartford. This first slide I wanted to share because it highlights, I didn't even know what Michael was going to say as he was introducing linguistic diversity, and that was exactly what I was going to show here in West Hartford, how obviously Spanish is far above all of the other languages that we have as far as population, but we do notice changing demographics that do respond to world events. The light blue line below is Russian, and you can see in the early 90s that spiked, and then we have Nepalese that it has been consistently growing since the mid 2005 on. And we have recently seen a huge spike in Brazilians and Portuguese speakers. So for us, our data is showing that other than Spanish, our top languages are always in flux. So hiring a bilingual tutor or paraprofessional is not as effective as some because of the diversity that we have, and the changing diversity. So that first prompt in this was the changes that we have made. And I think it's just being responsive to your changing demographics. We noticed, as soon as we noticed that we were getting a lot of Brazilians and from, I'm sorry, as soon as we noticed we were getting a lot of Brazilians, and they were really struggling to acclimate themselves to our school systems, we decided to get a outreach coordinator who was Brazilian herself and could really work with those families. And we've seen how effective that has been to really get our Brazilian families on board and engaged in their students' education. So I talk about that a little bit on the next slide as well. So we could change that. In West Hartford, we have over the last few years, district-wide, really been focusing on equity and diversity in general, and for all of our students, whether it's religion, sexuality, skin color, cultural differences, linguistic differences. I have tried to be very active in making sure that cultural and linguistic differences remains part of that discussion as we explore equity with our full staff K through 12. So through that, we've developed and highlighted the importance of partnerships with organizations in town. Because of the surge of Nepalese, there was a West Hartford houses the Nepalese of Connecticut organization, and that is centered in West Hartford. So we've created partnerships with that organization. We've used some people from there to help as translators. When we have trouble reaching out to a family, sometimes we'll reach out to those people. There's also some churches now, as I mentioned, the Brazilian population. There's some churches that we will reach out to and connect if we notice a family in need, or if we're having trouble reaching out to a family. Those community organizations are very helpful for us with our diversity. I did mention our outreach coordinator, which has proved invaluable in the last few years with our changing population. And also celebrating bilingualism, both through the seal of biliteracy in our at the high school level, but also we do have a program that was thriving pre-COVID. It's been hard to adjust since then, where we would invite families to read a book in their native language to their child's classroom. And it was bilingual books, and we would purchase the book in the child's native language and in English. The classroom teacher would read the book in English so the students were familiar with the story, and then invite the parent in to read the book in their native language, which exposed the students in the class to new language, the beauty of a different language. And they would also, if the parent was bilingual enough, or sometimes even through the student, would discuss a little bit about their country or their culture, which was wonderful for our students to experience that, and wonderful for our parents to volunteer to do that. Along the same lines, as we have had our population change, our library media specialists have been very, very active in finding books in native languages, which is not always easy, but we have been on the hunt to stock our libraries with native language books so that our newcomers can feel part of our school and go to the library and grab those books that they want. They want to read Harry Potter, they can read Harry Potter, and we have it in Portuguese. So trying to make sure that our students feel comfortable with our school system as well. As Maria talked a little bit about different translation resources that she has used in her district, we do a lot of the same things using, and Suzanne mentioned the Language Live translation, on-call translation, but also we do use the Talking Points app, and we're trying to figure out the 365, even though we're a Google district. So a lot of that using staff. And we have also created an in-house list of parents or former parents or community members who are willing to translate for conferences or other phone calls, reminders home, which is wonderful. And we do pay them. We do have an invoice system to pay them for their services with us. And that is great because it's very, very easy to use a language over the phone service, and I think in very confidential issues that is definitely preferred. But I love having the community members become involved because it helps our new families connect with others in the community. And we've actually, through the translation services, we've actually seen some families connect and become friends, which has been wonderful for us. Google Read Write is also one of those translation platforms, extensions in Google that students can translate their work. They can use it, it will read aloud to them. So that's been very helpful for our students who are some of those non-common languages as well. My last bullet here is the go-to strategies. That's a document that was prepared a few years ago. It's available on the web as a PDF if you search go-to strategies. I like it a lot because it's very simple for teachers to access the strategies and supports for students at different language levels. It's organized a few different ways if you're looking for by language level, if you're looking by content or skill that you're teaching, and how to differentiate that, or some different ways to present that material or activities that they can do in their class to support all learners, but specifically English learners, to increase their vocabulary and their English language through the content. Because we do have a lot of English learners, and as was mentioned previously, it is all of our general education teachers' role to help these students in their language acquisition process. So again, thank you very much. I'm going to toss it back to Michael for the next topic.
All right, thanks, Shalise and Maria. We're going to move on to our next topic, and that is we're going to look at long-term English learners. And again, going back to ESSA asks states to define what they mean by a long-term L. And by that, we mean students who have been in L for 5 or more years. We base that definition on national research. And when we look at long-term Ls, we're talking about almost a third of all English learners have been an English learner for 5 or more years. But that percentage increases when you talk about kids who are in middle school or in high school. There it's around half of all of those students. Those Ls are long-term Ls. And not surprisingly, for the state as a whole, when you talk about all English learners, about 21% of all English learners are also identified for special ed. But when you look at the long-term Ls, that percentage is 37%. So 37% of all long-term Ls are special ed students. Next slide, please. And when we talk about EverL, so those are the current Ls plus those kids who are in the 2-year monitoring period, and those kids who have moved beyond the 2-year monitoring period, we're talking about almost over 70,000 students in Connecticut schools are either currently in L or have been in L during their time in Connecticut public schools. And that's increased by 11% over the last 5 years. And again, when you look at middle school and high school, not surprisingly, there are a larger percentage of those students, of all high school students, have been in L at some point, as you would expect. And just one comment on long-term L, I forgot to mention that over the last 5 years, the number of long-term Ls has grown by over 28%. So there's significant growth with both of these groups. Megan, I think you had something you wanted to say here.
To add on to what you've already shared, I just wanted to note that the EverL category has become something of particular priority for Michael and I when we're looking at data, because we know that when students exit L services, they are still multilingual learners. They're still continuing their linguistic development as monolingual students continue to develop their language throughout their education, throughout their lives. So it's really essential to kind of think about the full trajectory of L outcomes. And to do that, we really not only need to think of our current Ls and our monitored Ls, but also those students who have exited. So if we're going to look L outcomes across the full trajectory of those outcomes, it's really essential to look at that EverL category. So Michael and I have, and Janet have made a point of looking more closely at this EverL category because it can be accessed in our data system, but as you know, if you are a person familiar with PSIS, it is not currently flagged EverL. So we are advocates of looking at the looking into ways to more clearly and publicly indicate a student's EverL status in the future. Next slide, please. And these prompts are the ones that we encouraged our panel to address, as well as for you if you decide to utilize this in your own districts. And I will turn it over to Daisy Torres of Hartford Public Schools.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, Michael, for the opportunity to be here today. I am going to be sharing a little bit about my district, Hartford Public Schools. I am the Director of English Learner Services, World and Dual Language Programs. I've been in this role this is my third school year. And so I'm going to just talk a little bit about our district overview so people have a context when I'm describing some of the strategies that we're using in Hartford to address our long-term Ls. We are a very diverse community. We have approximately 18,000 identified English learners, which is approximately 21% of our population. Of those English learners, we have about 27% identified as longer-term Ls or been with us 5 years or more. What is so unique about our English learners is that we have, as Michael alluded to earlier, over 60 different languages represented among our Ls. And district-wide, that would be former Ls or even just students who are not identified as Ls. We have over 90 different languages represented in Hartford. Our top languages are Spanish and Portuguese. Our Portuguese numbers continue to grow. But what I wanted to highlight here is that we have a very low incident language here, but that is starting to emerge, which is Serbo-Croatian, which I found really fascinating. But that just speaks to the diversity that we have in Hartford. I'm going to speak just a little bit about some of the progress monitoring and strategies that we're using currently in our district. One of the first things I want to talk about is our strategic plan. We have a district model of excellence, and this is basically what our superintendent has rolled out with our central office staff across our district as sort of a roadmap, right, of how we will function in Hartford. And part of that district model of excellence are 4 categories, or what I call buckets: teaching and learning, family and community support, climate and culture, and operational effectiveness. And we live, meaning the Department of English Learner Services, under teaching and learning. And what I want to highlight here is that Hartford has really taken a strong look at how we're servicing our students with disabilities and our English learners. And what we're really focusing on is this idea that it is a shared responsibility, as some of my colleagues have already pointed out. That we want to make sure that we are ensuring that our students have access to high quality tier 1 instruction, right? And so that really is about working with our general education staff, our administrators, so that we understand high quality instruction for our Ls, right? And so one of the things that we're doing is really focusing on English language development and academic support. So for some of our longer term Ls, we've added a support class at the high school level, an ESOL level 3, for students who continue to need to develop some of those academic skills. In addition, we are excited that we just recently rolled out our academic tutoring program, which is another resource that we're using for our students across the district, but particularly I want to highlight for our longer term Ls, this is another way of getting additional time with a certified teacher to develop those academic language skills, because we know that research tells us that cognitive and academic language proficiency takes years to develop, right? And so this is just another way. This is available evenings and now on Saturday mornings. So we're excited about that rollout. We also have a wonderful partnership with the Hartford Public Library, where students work with our staff there. We have some certified teachers working with the library staff to, again, provide some after school and summer support to our students. We are fortunate in Hartford that we have an L data coordinator, given that we are a large district, who helps us to work on the technical pieces behind the scenes in terms of really looking at data. And of course, we've been able to manipulate PowerSchool and customize it to meet our needs. So that is one way that we are progress monitoring. We are also just recently rolled out a K-12 service and delivery plan with a position statement. And basically that is just where what we as a district believe and are really in sort of aligning our programming across research-based strategies, program models such as dual language, transitional bilingual, and what research says about effective strategies for ELs. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so this slide I put here because this is, I'm calling this promising practices for long-term ELs. And the reason I'm using this term is because we are moving in a direction, right, to hopefully be a model district. But right now, these are some of the systems and instructional supports that we are either in early development of or we're moving towards in the future. And so right now, I'll just talk very quickly about instruction. We are very fortunate in Hartford to have L district coaches who help support our teachers, our department teachers, as well as general education teachers to work on best practices, research-based practices around academic vocabulary, student engagement, and rigor. And I want to highlight this rigor because even when we're working with our long-term ELs, sometimes we have certain mindsets around our students, what I like to call pobrecito syndrome, where we want to help, and at the same time, we're not holding our students to high standards, right? And to keep them and move them into that grade level content. And so this has been a continual focus area for us, and we will continue to develop and build capacity. One of the things I also want to highlight that we're extremely proud of in Hartford is the native language development that we're doing. We have created native speaker classes at the high school level on AP track so that students come in, can build upon their native language skills beyond the bilingual programs in K2. And so we recently rolled out the Seal of Biliteracy, in which we had over 100 students in school years 19 and 20 who earned the Seal of Biliteracy on their high school diploma. We are also looking at making sure that our assessments match what our student population looks like. And so since we have such a high number of Spanish speakers, we are looking and we are building our assessment library, right? So that it includes assessments that our students can demonstrate what skills they bring in their native language. We have a lot of professional learning that's focused on transferring those skills, not translating, but transferring and building and bridging that language. So we're talking a lot about Cheryl Yoro's work, right, in our dual language program. And so we are working with our partners at MABE to ensure that our teachers are getting high quality teaching and learning in that area. And again, we talked a lot about just really building capacity with our teachers and our administrators about what our KELP standards are and how that works in alignment with our curriculum. And so some of the other systems that we are working on in Hartford include just a redesign of our bilingual program in K2 and the added dual language program that we have at one of our schools that we just rolled out in kindergarten this year. And this is just to speak to the fact that we value native language and that we want to build upon that. We know that research says that if you build that native language early in the formative years, that you will then lessen your students who will become long-term ELs. And that is where we're focusing. We're also looking at our data. We know we cannot compare our students to native speakers of English, right? That we really need to disaggregate that data by true peers. And so we are now looking at data by time in program, by program code, and really building that capacity of our principals, of our central office staff, just so that we begin to really understand where our students are and how to, align those interventions and supports. As my colleague in East Hartford mentioned, we are now also looking at Elevation as a data platform that's going to help us with sort of those paperwork and that progress monitoring that's inclusive of language acquisition plans that is available to all staff, right? Oftentimes what we have is just sort of in-house, and we kind of keep that within our department. This is going to allow us then to open up those supports to everyone, so that there's full transparency and that we have a better way of monitoring our students. And lastly, one of the things that we're working on as a district is the MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support. We're developing a framework that will be looking at that research, particularly students who are identified Ls, long-term Ls, SLIFE students, right? And we're really rolling out a district plan that's also aligned to our instructional vision, which is going to really speak to high quality teaching and learning for our students. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Evelyn Robles Rivas, who is going to speak a little bit more about long-term Ls from Meriden, my hometown.
Here we go. Thank you, Daisy. It's definitely a pleasure to be here as well to share a little bit about Meriden Public Schools. I actually embarked in this work about 3 years ago as the supervisor of language and community partnership for Meriden Public School. And one interesting fact about Meriden is that yes, we do have a high numbers of Spanish-speaking students. We also have a bilingual Spanish program in addition to the ESOL program. But we do have 46 languages represented in Meriden. So it's actually an extremely diverse small district, right? We have everything here. Even though we only have about over 9,000 students enrolled in the district, we have about over 1,000 students identified as English learners. In terms of long-term English learners, we have about over 300 students identify as long-term English learners. And another interesting fact is that, as Michael mentioned before, 74 of those students are identified as in need of specialized education. So they're dually identified. So as a district, I mean, we're not a big district, so I am the only one person in our office working with ELS, but I do have a great support from district colleagues, administrators, principals, and the school team, because it is so important that everyone is involved in the process of understanding and servicing English learners. We know we have a large numbers of English learners as part of our ESOL program, so they are in the regular mainstream classroom. So we do monthly meetings to review our data, to review students' progress. We do that through our department meetings and also through our weekly PLC meetings in each school. I have an opportunity to meet with my school's staff, but also they do look at data when they meet with grade level teams. So we also develop, we have a high mobility of students in Meriden. So sometimes, we have students moving from one neighborhood to the other. So they actually move within the school as well. So we put together a student portfolio. So when the students moving from one school to another, they bring information so teachers can get that information right away and schools can get that information right away to make sure that we place them in the right program and we put strategies for them right at the beginning. We do have PD sessions district-wide. So we are always working on creating workshops for all teachers and support staff, including self-help standards and effective strategies. So that is happening district-wide and also school-wide. We consistently have our ESL bilingual teachers join small sessions of these workshops to make sure that teachers have the tools and strategies, especially at the middle and high school level, especially when we have newcomer students in grade 10 or 12, 10, 11, or 12 grade, and they're not part of a bilingual classroom. So they are actually enrolled in, courses and they do not have the language. We do provide strategies for teachers to work with them as well. Next slide. Great. Perfect. I wanted to talk a little bit about specific things that we're actually putting in place, considering grade level in programming. And K1, we look closely at the resources and materials that we had for implementing native language proficiency, so we actually look at the program a few years ago, and we made sure that we have materials and resources in both languages. So make sure that we are creating a true dual language, native language instruction, literacy instruction, and support for students in kindergarten and grade 1. We want to make sure that we provide the specific foundation, like Daisy mentioned. We make sure that they transfer knowledge, not just necessarily translating for them, right? So we did that 2 years ago, and it's working great. And we're moving forward that model, adding 2nd, 3rd, and 4th and 5th grade as well. In our transitional program, grades 2nd to 8th grade, we are consistently monitoring students, looking at a formative assessment, student work, in addition to the regular assessment that we do quarterly, to look at how students are progressing, not just academically, but linguistically, how they're growing in terms of reading, writing, and comprehension, right? We do have supplementary materials and books that are exclusively aligned to the core curriculum, right? We have a program in language arts, science, math, and we make sure that we have supplemental resources that students are using, especially at the middle and high school level. Sometimes we don't have time to teach language in isolation and then academic. We really need to make sure that we have a plan in place that these students are understanding what they're learning, but at the same time develop the vocabulary that they need, the academic vocabulary they need to be successful in academic courses as well. At the high school level, we have a new English curriculum, and we work closely with the department leaders and our district to make sure that our ESOL courses are actually aligned to what the curriculum is providing as well. So that is happening in 6, 8, and also English 9 and 12. So again, we're including these KELP standards. We are actually in consistent communication with the department leaders to make sure that our students are receiving the support they need. As you know, now at the high school level, we have we know that the students need to take the English courses, right, to complete graduation requirement, and our ESOL courses is actually helping them to make sure that that they are not struggling in those courses, and we're closely monitoring that. Again, our LTSS courses at the high school level are extremely explicit in emphasizing oral, academic vocabulary, and writing. And we're using thematic unit and project-based learning to engage students in meaningful activities so they are enhancing their academic vocabulary. Again, and I know Daisy mentioned it before, but this is a work in progress, right? I do have a lot of hope that we are actually going to improve the work that we're doing, and we're doing that by regularly, meeting with school staff, meeting with school counselors, and meeting with district team to consistently looking at data. That's extremely important, and this is the work that we have to do collectively. I mean, it's not just one person, it's not just the bilingual department or ESOL department, it's the district as a whole. And another thing that we are actually looking at right now is the students that exited the program. They're no longer L, but they are still with us, right? Of course, we're a small district, so I am able to work with Dr. Al Larson. He is the research and evaluation specialist for the district, and we're actually consistently looking at the students that exit the program but are still with us, how we're servicing them. So we do have regular meetings with the school team, and we identify the students, we make sure that the schools have that information, and we closely monitor how they're doing in their academic courses. And if there is a need for support, we're able to provide that support through the programs that we have in schools. We're also monitoring data to track students' progress in course taking at the high school level. And I wanted to say that I just wanted to highlight something that we did recently. And I worked with Al on looking at a longitudinal study on students that have been with us since 2010 and 2011, students that started in kindergarten and first grade. And although we do have a high mobility of students in the district, we were able to identify 51 students that are currently juniors and seniors and at both of our high schools, and they are taking 2 or more AP courses. So they are they successfully exited the program, and they are actually on track for college and career readiness. So we're really proud to share that information. And I think, again, this is a collective effort. And the more we look at our data, the more we look at how we're supporting our students, we know we do have challenges, like, the more students we receive in our district, less resources sometimes we have. So I think this is a collective effort. We want to make sure that we educate every single person in the district that is working with our students, because the more we work together and we build capacity, we will be able to look at the information and inform our stakeholders on how to best address the needs of our students. So that's it. Thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you, Evelyn, and thank you, Daisy. That's really fascinating, the systems that you're both building and putting in place for both your current Ls, but your monitored and former Ls. That's very interesting. Our next topic, we're going to talk about immigrant Ls and students with limited or interrupted formal education. We only began collecting individual student level data on immigrants in school year 17-18. But you can see among Ls, we're talking about almost 10,000 students who are Ls and also immigrants. And by definition, what we mean is immigrant students are students who have been in a US public school for 3 years or fewer. Next slide, please. And this is what I was alluding to before. When you look at different grade bands, high school has a particularly high number of immigrant students. And it's this weird sort of mix among high school Ls. You have brand new students, and then you have long-term Ls. And that's one of the things that we tried to unpack and think about in our paper on high school Ls. But I'm going to turn it over to Helene Becker from Norwalk, and she will tell us how they provide services and address the needs of these student groups. Thank you, Helene.
Thank you, Michael. We have about 2,000 Ls here in Norwalk, and as Suzanne from Bloomfield mentioned earlier, it's sometimes a lot easier to provide services when you have a large population because you have resources, and that's really how we are in Norwalk. Let me mention that we have many programs and initiatives for our immigrant students, but I'm just going to talk briefly about 3 for our students that I think are particularly important. The first one is our L Welcome Center. This is the first place that our students, our immigrant students and families come to when they come to the city. And it's very important to have a welcoming atmosphere, obviously, for these new families. And at our Welcome Center, we assess our students for language, for English, and also for Spanish. Most of our students are Spanish speaking, and for math. And we interview families about the prior education of their children, and then we help families with registration. We also give them a welcome gift. Again, we want them to feel very welcome to be here. And in our welcome gift, we have information about the city, and we also give all our students a backpack with school supplies so that they start off right. And another function of our Welcome Center is to disseminate the information about our new students out to the schools. And I want to mention that it's very important to have clear procedures for disseminating this information because we want to make sure that our students have a great start. We tell the schools where we think the students should be placed by grade, what courses they should take, so that students are placed correctly and can start off right. So that's our Welcome Center. The other initiative I want to talk about is a tutoring center. We have these at both of our high schools, and I think it's really important for our immigrant students, especially our beginners, to have a place to go during the day for extra help, either during lunch or during a free period. And so this has been really helpful for our immigrants. And we have the tutoring centers staffed by bilingual teachers and bilingual paraeducators who have been very helpful. The last thing I want to mention on this slide is about semester courses, especially for our late arrivals. We actually don't have this yet in Norwalk, but it's something that we're working towards. Many of our immigrant students come, as you know, any time of year, and it's very hard for a student to go into a course where half the curriculum has already been covered. And so this is a continual problem for our immigrants who come in December, January, February, where they're thrown in and right in the middle. So what we're working towards is having courses that start in January. So we might have our ESL courses start in September, but then again in January, also our sheltered courses like ESL algebra, et cetera. It would be great if they can all start in January as well, so that students can start from the very beginning. I think this would be very helpful. So we're working towards that. Next slide, please. When we talk about addressing the needs of immigrant students, we also have to talk about addressing the needs of the immigrant families. And so what we've done in Norwalk is to try to form partnerships with a lot of different agencies to help our families. And we give this information about these different agencies to our families when they come to the L Welcome Center. So we've been able to partner with some organizations to help our students and our families with financial needs. We encourage families to apply for SNAP or food stamps. Even if they're undocumented, their children might be eligible if they're born in this country for this financial help. So we let families know about this. We've also partnered with free clinics and our school-based health centers to make sure that We have appointments available for our students so that we can get them into school really quickly so that they can get their physicals done quickly. And we've also partnered with agencies that offer psychological services, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about SLIFE students next. And I want to mention that last year we had a big influx of new Ls, and we were able to partner with our city, with the city of Norwalk, to help us. We approached them and they were able to give us some funds so that we could hire these care teams, which consist of a care coordinator, which helps our families with their basic needs such as food and shelter, and also a clinician to help families with psychological needs. And as Megan said earlier in the presentation, that our students really belong to all the teachers in the school. And when you think about it, they really belong to the whole city. And it's in the interest of the whole city that our students do well. So it's important to partner with the city and to see how they can help the schools. Next slide, please. So a very important subgroup of our immigrant students are our students with limited and/or interrupted formal education, our SLIFE students. And in 2014, Norwalk started to get a lot of these students, mostly as unaccompanied minors. And fortunately, we put a program in place for them at that time, because when we got the influx last year, it was mostly these SLIFE students, and we had a place for them in our courses because we had developed a program several years ago. So I want to talk about the educational part of this program, and then I'll briefly talk about the other part, which has to do with psychological needs and other needs. So we form special courses just for our SLIFE students. We have a course called ESL Foundations, which really works on basic literacy skills, which we found that our students didn't have, often not even in their native language. We have Math Foundations, which covers the curriculum, the skills from kindergarten through grade 8, and our students always fall somewhere in there to get them ready for algebra, because our first course in high school was ESL Algebra, and even though that was a sheltered class, our SLIFE students weren't ready for it. So we get them ready for algebra in this Math Foundations class. We also have Science Foundations, which gets our SLIFE students ready for our science sequence. And of course, we also have our tutoring center, which I mentioned earlier, which is especially important for our SLIFE students. I neglected to put on this slide, but I do want to mention that we have an intensive summer school program for our SLIFE students and any of our Ls actually, which offers 120 hours in the summer of ESL, and students actually end up getting a credit. That's a year's worth of hours, and so they end up getting a credit for the course if they stay in it all summer. It's 4 hours a day for 6 weeks, very intensive, and a lot of our students attend, and this has been really helpful, especially for us SLIFE students. Next slide, please. So the other part, and this is just as important as the educational needs for us SLIFE students, we realized when they arrived that they often have experienced trauma, and a student who has had trauma is not ready to learn, and sitting in a classroom and learning is very difficult for them. So we decided to hire a bilingual social worker just for this group of students. And we've also partnered with an outside agency which helps us with the psychological needs of these students. And a very important initiative which we started is called CBITS, Cognitive Behavioral Intervention for Trauma in Schools at the secondary level, and it's the same program called Bounce Back at the elementary schools. And this program puts students in groups. It's a group dynamic where they learn strategies for coping with trauma and trauma symptoms. And this has been extremely helpful. There are 8 to 10 kids in a group, and the outside agency helps us run these groups along with our bilingual social workers. And we found this to be very, very helpful. We've gotten good feedback from the students, and teachers have noticed improvements in these students. Also, the SLIFE students have particular cultural and legal needs. Sometimes they come to us and they don't know what our laws are. They don't know what the age of legal consent is. And so we have our resource officers our police officers go into the classrooms and do presentations on laws that students really need to know about so that they don't get themselves in trouble. We've also partnered with Connecticut Students for a Dream so that students can learn about resources that are available to them, especially if they're undocumented. And we also try to help our students with legal services. So that's it for my presentation on SLIFE. And now I'd like to turn this over to Michael again to talk about the duly identified students.
All right, thanks, Helene. We really appreciate your expertise, particularly in this area. In the interest of time, we're going to skip over these slides on the duly identified. I will draw your attention that the information is there, and Janet put together this slide you're looking at right now, some takeaways from our session that we had on students with IEPs. Janet put this together for us, and she has the link to the recording of that session. I don't know, Janet, do you want to say a word or two about this?
Yes, like this very wonderful presentation with our panel here, we had a similar webinar specific to duly identified ELs. So we wanted to highlight that here and encourage you to access that session as well for really some timely information to support you in your efforts with these students as well. And these were some key takeaways from that. But again, there's much more content. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. All right, let's skip ahead to our final topic, language transition or language support services. I just make a couple of observations here. One, the increase in sheltered English, and I think that has to do with the increase in the number of our high school ELs over the last 5 years. The other thing I would note as far as bilingual education, as all of you are familiar with, the CSDE mandates bilingual programs based on enrollments in October. In this current year, 315 schools have been identified to offer a mandated program located in 55 different districts. By and large, those are Spanish, followed by Portuguese and Arabic, but some of those smaller languages come and go. And again, it's about the concentration of 20 students who are ELs in one building sharing that same native language. So this year, actually, Quiche was identified for the first time for a mandated bilingual program. We also have Indian languages being identified these last few years for bilingual programs. Next slide, please. And of course, the programs vary by grade with that high school limitation of 30 months to where students who have 30 months or fewer to graduation can't participate in a bilingual program. You have a lot fewer high school kids in a bilingual program. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to turn it over to Rowena Zalali from New Fairfield, and she's going to talk about building services in her district. And it's important, and it's interesting because New Fairfield is one of those districts, those smaller districts that has really experienced a lot of growth over the last few years. So it'll be interesting to hear what she has to say as far as how they're responding and what they're doing. So thank you, Rowena.
Thank you for the introduction. And right now, I just want to say, after listening to Helene, I feel like we're going to need a bigger boat. So it's definitely changing and changing rapidly. When I was hired last year in New Fairfield, they had been noticing an increase in students. And at the time of my interview, they said they had 77 students. So last year was my first year with the district. And at that time, we went up somewhere in the 80s. And right away during incoming new students, I said, oh, we're going to need to offer a bilingual program next year in the 3 through 5 schools. So New Fairfield has about 2,200 students and 4 schools all on the same road. And I'm the only ESL teacher for all of the students in the district. And luckily they're all on one road, so I just go back and forth between the schools to service the kids. And it works out. I think part of the reason that we have such growth is also economic. during this pandemic in the spring and over the summer, we saw a huge influx of students coming in because families are losing their jobs and moving together. So we've seen a lot of adult siblings, 2-family households beginning, and then all the kids are coming to school. And so that has increased our numbers slightly. The most of what I see that needed to be done in the district was teachers needed training and professional development on the needs of how to service language learners. So I went in and I did that with the schools. I did informal meetings with teachers. When teachers contacted me, I talked to them about individual students, and I started servicing the students right away. Prior to my hiring, they offered English language students before school or after school 30 minutes once a week, only if they had signed into the program. So a lot of the students really were not getting enough of what they needed. So I went in and I set up a program and serviced the kids. Sometimes I push in, sometimes I pull out. And surprisingly, different things have happened. The middle school kids asked for more time. They asked for a summer program. So this summer I actually did a summer program for K through 6, which was 5 weeks, 4 hours a day. And then this year we have a half day once a week, and the kids also ask me to work after school on Zoom. So when they get home from school, they Zoom from home and we do books together. It's really student directed. Now, as far as growing the new bilingual program, and I also would like to point out that next year we'll also need to do a bilingual program in our K through 2 school. So it'll be in 2 buildings. This year, I sent the letters to the students. We tried to hire people, but here is our challenge, is that even though last year we had 20 students, this year out of those 20, we only had 7 because students exited out and students also moved up to the middle school. But we decided we would offer the bilingual to any student who spoke Spanish who was still an EL. And some students are interested, but then it becomes the challenge of finding a teacher during the pandemic. So that has been our next challenge. We have 12 languages, which is interesting for a small incidence, low incidence district. And I have been trying to get home language materials for all of the kids. Whether the first thing I did last year was I asked the district to purchase Reading A to Z. So I knew the Spanish-speaking children, the Polish-speaking children, some of the children would have many books available to them online. And then I went to some of the organizations like childrenslibrary.org that has a lot of different languages, but not that many books, just to try and get materials into the kids' hands to help them maintain their home language while learning English. So that's been a lot of what I've been doing is trying to help them maintain their language, trying to set up the new bilingual program, trying to wonder how we can make it work, especially because it's this year with the pandemic. As of yesterday, then we were told today we'd be home. So then it's more difficult. How would we get that to work when we're all Zooming and the time is very tight for getting into the Zoom classroom with the kids to work with them. And, the kids, I will speak Spanish to the kids and to their parents. I try my best, but it's not my native language and I'm not that good at it. So it really doesn't count. So it is a challenge, but just trying to get the kids what they need, teaching them the tools of how to translate things, like for the middle school and high school, how to do Google Translate on their phone, that they can also use the photo, and helping the teachers learn how they can translate things for the students and get them on board with a whole different way than they've been teaching, to recognize that these are ELs in their class and all of the things that they can do to help them be more successful and make the language comprehensible to them, and then giving them the opportunity to use the target language. It has also been a bit of a change, but I'm happy to say our educators have been really terrific about listening and wanting to do their best for the students and really making a big concerted effort to do that. We still have a long way to go, definitely, but I think as a district, they're coming along very nicely, and I really value how great they've been with me and with the students, and really trying to support their academic learning. And on that note, I would like to introduce Adela Jorge Ferguson, my former mentor.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Yeah, we miss Rowena very much. She was wonderful with us, and I have to say that I am so proud of everything that she's doing right now, developing new programs in a new district. Okay, so I wanted to share with you our overall EL population and how it continues to grow. Around 2010, 2011, we had around 2,000 students, and now we have about 3,000. Out of all of our students speak 45 different languages, so they also are very diverse in terms of their native languages. The vast majority do speak Spanish, with 2,596 speaking Spanish. We also have a large Albanian speaking population. And as with other districts, our Portuguese speaking student population is also increasing. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our bilingual education programs. And at the elementary level, what we do is we have identified 3 schools that are strategically placed or located at each end of the city. And at the elementary level, they serve as bilingual centers. So we have a bilingual center within an elementary school. And in doing it this way, it allows us to dedicate a lot of resources to our students. So by having the 3 bilingual centers at the elementary level, we're able to provide each school with a bilingual basic skills teacher and bilingual classroom instructional aides. And their purpose is to work with students that come in with very low native language skills to build up their language skills, so that way they'll be more successful in transferring all that knowledge into English. So we want to make sure that they have a solid foundation in their native language. In addition to that, we also have certified bilingual reading teachers that provide that additional support. We also, since we are a bilingual center within an elementary school, we're able to partially mainstream students. So when students reach about 20 months, we will partially mainstream into specific subject areas in order to give the students that exposure to a regular education classroom, and to make sure that when they do transition completely, it is a smooth and seamless transition for the students. In addition to when students go into partial mainstream, we also have bilingual basic skills teachers who work specifically with those students to further develop their English language skills. And then we work closely with the classroom teachers and all the support providers working with students to make determinations as to which students would benefit from additional time in bilingual programs. At the elementary level, it also helps that as a district, the instructional materials that have been chosen for regular ed students also have a very strong Spanish language component. For example, we use Wonders at the elementary level, and Wonders has Maravillas. So that way students are able to transfer between one language and the other. And with the Wonders program, it also has an EL adaptive learning component, which is very beneficial for all of our English learners. From there, as we transition into middle school, we use StudySync, and that particular program allows to set the instructional level for each student depending on their level of English proficiency. And it also has an EL pathway that our students are able to use. Next slide, please. And so when our teachers first come in and they go through new teacher orientation, we provide training for all of them. And then we also provide additional supports throughout the year. Some things that we have been working on over the past 2 years or so is we have taken the science NGSS curriculum, and we are actually embedding EL supports. So that way, this not only helps our bilingual students who are serviced by our EL teachers, but it also helps students that are receiving instruction by regular ed education teachers because it gives them those supports. Next slide, please. And then this is something that we are very excited about. We have developed a Spanish for native speakers curriculum, and this particular course has been designed as an English class so that we are covering all the standards and the mechanics and everything else that a student would need to be successful in a regular English class, except it's taught in Spanish, with the idea that the students will then be able to transfer everything that they learn in that course into English. So what we're doing is we're offering the Spanish class not as a Spanish as a world language, but rather Spanish as a literacy class to develop students' literacy skills that they're then able to apply into the regular English classes at the high school and be successful. In addition to that, we've also had our students in the Spanish for native speakers class take the AP Spanish exam last year. And I'm happy to say that we had quite a few students that were able to score high enough. So we're very excited about that. We finished our Spanish for native speakers 1. Now we're working on Spanish for native speakers 2. And something I wanted to share is that last year, Waterbury Public Schools valedictorians, 5 out of the 5 were either immigrants or first generation, and 3 out of the 5 started as English learners in Waterbury Public Schools. So we're very excited to also share that with you. So thank you. That is all that I have for today. So I'm going to turn it back.
Thank you very much, Adele. I really appreciate it. Both you and Rowena talking about programs. And actually, that reminds me, I wish I could remember the name of it, but I think it was Montville, maybe about 5 years ago. Their valedictorian was a girl who came from, I think it was Nepal, and she had no education at all there. And she went on to become the valedictorian of her high school class, and she won a Gates Scholarship. So it's always important to remember like what these students can accomplish when given the right support and encouragement. So thank you very much for ending on that note, Adele. I really appreciate it. So here's some of our links to some of the resources that are available. This, as Megan mentioned, recording of this session will be available on the Performance Matters 2020 webpage. In the interest of time, because we kind of did run long, we're going to end here. But I want to thank our panel for really giving us so much great information and really kind of taking, what can be stale data and making it alive in terms of their district context and really give us some insights. When we do these seminars, this is what we're hoping for, is that conversation, between us, but also amongst districts in terms of sharing resources and processes that you've developed over time. So we're really thankful for it, and we appreciate all of you who are accessing this session live and who listen to this as a recording. So we really do appreciate it. Thank you very much on behalf of my colleagues, Megan Elliott, Vicki Flick, and Janet Stuck. Thanks. And our next webinar will be in mid-December, and that'll be about welcome centers. And then at the beginning of the year, we'll have one on charter schools. And then we're thinking about some for next year, which will include things like maybe seal of biliteracy and applying the growth model. We'll see what we can put together. But thanks again, and take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.